In the main event at UFC 305, DDP was able to retain his title, and Israel Adesanya made a ton of crucial mistakes that ultimately led him to fall short of regaining the middleweight title. Something that most people might or might not have noticed was Izzy's lack of low kicks in this fight. His bread and butter technique was only thrown 9 times in a span of 3.5 rounds, and this is not usually common for Izzy. In his last 5 fights, Izzy has averaged at least 34 leg kicks thrown per fight, and I believe it was unusually low in this fight because he likely didn't want to present opportunities for DDP to blitz him. When you throw any kind of kick, you're going to be squared on the center line, and someone who loves to blitz as much as DDP is likely going to take that window of opportunity. Similar to when Jon Jones fought Lyoto Machida, Jones highlighted that because of Machida's karate background, every time he threw a kick, he would get blitzed. However, for the reputation that Izzy has for being a counter striker, it was interesting to see him take this kind of approach regarding DDP's blitzes, and we'll touch on this later on in the video. Another reason just could have been the ongoing stance switches from DDP that made it difficult for Izzy to target. However, every single time Izzy opened up with naked leg kicks, they landed with ease along with a ton of speed and power. Something else to note was that early in the fight was an entry technique that involved foot feints for Izzy to inch into range. Izzy was very cautious in advancing into range. Every single time Izzy would lead with a jab or a foot feint, DDP would try to walk Izzy into a lead kick, especially to the leg and the head as well. And the reason why he does this is probably because if you notice, Izzy places a ton of weight on his lead leg when he jabs. But for the most part, Izzy was reading this over and over again, and those kicks didn't really faze Izzy too much. However, I thought Izzy not following up with multiple jabs really hurt his chances to make the most out of these exchanges. A micro skill that Izzy has is that he's very good at blocking left high kicks. Pereira, who knocked out Yuri Prochazka at UFC 303, was the only person that I've seen to land a flush left high kick, well apart from Kelvin Gastelum. He's the only one that I've seen land a flush high kick on Izzy, although Izzy did block a lot of them as well in that fight. But Paulo Costa even tried to sneak in some left high kicks and never landed any. Izzy generally keeps that right guard in the right position. Another thing that was apparent in this fight was Izzy's aggressiveness in his striking, and it started with entry techniques that involved 3 different jabs: touch jabs, stiff jabs, and left jab post / frame. Every time Izzy threw any kind of touch jabs, DDP reacted defensively with a high guard. So that gave Izzy the green light to enter range by posting with his jab hand. This is one that Izzy uses to safely enter range and occupy his opponent. It's the same technique that allowed him to rock Alex Pereira in their first fight and knock him out in the second. Extremely effective technique, as it blinds your opponent for just a second for you to set up another technique behind it. DDP was very guard heavy in this fight, as he was in the Robert Whittaker fight. However, this tactic worked against Whittaker because he's not a body striker by any means, specifically a body puncher. But ironically, history should have told us the same story with Izzy when it came to body punches, as he also doesn't throw too many of them as well. But in this fight, Izzy used the posting jab to draw a reaction out of DDP to land a ton of 8s and 7s to the body. Very surprising, as Izzy never engages in this range of striking, let alone actually throwing body punches. But however, after the first round, where Izzy landed that posting jab into a right body hook to close the round, in the following round, Izzy tried that same technique and DDP countered it with a takedown entry. High level stuff, smart read and adjustment, and very well executed by DDP. But for the most part, it looked like it was a clear advantage for Izzy and a hole in DDP's game, as his reaction to those strikes were not that great. But as the fight went on, Izzy tried a ton of different combos behind the touch jabs and the posting jabs, but nothing was really effective for 2 reasons. Izzy's boxing was not great, as he didn't utilize a ton of involvement with his legs to punch. Everything was all arm punches, which isn't great. You can use arm punches to set up power punches, but if all your punches are arm punches, then you're not inflicting any kind of damage. The uppercuts and hooks were pretty much slapping, as Izzy didn't rotate his hips or his back foot enough. He also didn't sit down on his punches a lot as well. I also thought the shot selection behind the jabbing techniques wasn't great. There were a ton of openings for Izzy to land knees to the head as DDP was dropping down with his high guard, but Izzy rarely recognized these openings during the fight. Or he might have did, he just didn't throw the right strikes. The opportunity was there many times during the fight for Izzy to create his Sean O'Malley versus Cheeto Vera moment. This man has like a 44.5-inch leg reach. He can practically knee DDP sitting on that same couch that he does watching all the fights, and still decided not to do it. He was looking for the uppercut, but the uppercut was just trash. Like, it just wasn't working at all. The technique, the distance was off. I don't understand why he just kept going to that. The lack of variety in this fight really hurt Izzy in my opinion. In return, All of this gave DDP opportunities to shell up, absorb the strikes, and counter with same side combos in the pocket. That caution of walking into traps that Izzy had in the first round was gone, and he invited exchanges that left him to getting hit much more. Knowing how effective it is for Izzy to set up his power strikes behind the jab, DDP tried a variety of methods to take it away. He continued to try to land those lead kicks, whether it's to the leg, body, or head. He would try to counter with right hands over the top. It would either come off of a sequence or collision exchange. He tried taking his head off the line and throwing with Izzy. He tried check hooks. He tried single legs, and some either landed or didn't. There were just times where DDP couldn't land simply because of him making himself a smaller target, and because of that he just couldn't see his opponent. However, there were some good moments of shot selection along with Izzy's aggression. Something that Izzy brought back into this fight that we haven't seen since the Vettori 2 fight, that was pretty much a staple combo in that fight, was the cross uppercut combo. Izzy perfectly used this combo to crack DDP's high guard defense, and it worked tremendously. The straight punch to occupy his opponent and the uppercut behind it landed flush. And then the opportunities to follow up with strikes were there. Much more combo work from Izzy in this fight, probably his best yet since joining the UFC, as we haven't seen Izzy throw combos like this since his kickboxing days. Even though there are mainly good things to mention about Izzy's aggressive striking, in combat, there's the other side of the fight that you have to prioritize in order to win the fight convincingly, and is called efficiency or net rating. Pretty much the amount of times you hit somebody differentiated by the amount of times you get hit. And for every good thing Izzy did in this fight, he gave it right back defensively. Dominic Cruz said on commentary, whoever initiates the exchange in this fight normally wins it. So Izzy wasn't winning the fight, he was essentially trading strikes with DDP. That's why everyone on Twitter was saying that they were evenly matched. Izzy's main defensive habit is evasion. I tweeted out that the Kai Kara France knockout was what DDP needed to do against Izzy, because a bad habit that Izzy has is that he can stand tall and pull his head out of range. Many times you see him evade head kicks, pulling his head out, something that not too many MMA fighters do. Earlier I mentioned that Izzy's lack of leg kicks is likely due to DDP's blitzing. Well, to add more to that topic, with everything that I mentioned about Izzy's defense in this fight, it seemed like he chose to take a more defensive approach when it came to the entry techniques from DDP. And when he chose to be more defensively minded, I thought the strategy and the tactics weren't diverse enough. DDP closed distance in 3 different ways in this fight. We obviously know about the blitzing. He tried to work behind a southpaw jab in this fight, and he tried to smother Izzy behind a high guard. When DDP would step in with a strike, shift his way into range behind the high guard, or motion like he's gonna blitz, Izzy dealt with these from DDP in 3 ways: posting/long guard, directing, and hand control. Posting means you frame with your lead hand, either on your opponent's head, shoulder, or chest, and keeps the right guard up. Directing means you push your opponent and hence direct him one way, and you step off the other. It's like a pivot check hook, but instead of punching, you're just pushing. And lastly, hand control. Something that he did very well against Pereira in the first fight when he had his back up against the fence. And you can see here when DDP blitzes, you can see Izzy reach out, and it's to control the hands of DDP so he can't throw. Even in moments where it looked like DDP might blitz, Izzy had his hand out ready to control the hands. And this was incredibly easy for Izzy to do for 2 reasons. Because the high guard is very easy to control and manipulate, you can pretty much control their hands and direct them very easily. And DDP was only blitzing with straight punches early in the fight. So these tactics worked for a good chunk of the fight until it didn't. Because an adjustment that DDP decided to make was to just loop punches over the top of Izzy's defense to cover more distance. And when this happened, Izzy's defense pretty much suffered altogether, especially with his lack of counter-striking. So I thought that it was interesting that once those tactics failed, we didn't see more clinching from Izzy. Like, one of the things that Izzy did very well when he fought Pereira for the first time was using the clinch to stop the forward aggression. Like, do you guys remember that? Izzy wasn't even really trying to do damage. He was just using his clinch game to tie Pereira up and turn him towards the fence. Out in the center, it's harder to do, but again, it's not impossible, and Izzy didn't even attempt it. Izzy didn't really try to counter-strike in this fight. In moments where he was able to make DDP miss, he wasn't eager to return fire. And this is an issue that I've mentioned many times with Izzy. He does half the job when it comes to fighting. He makes people miss, but he doesn't make them pay. And if your strategy is to press somebody, and they're not giving you a painful reason to not close distance, why wouldn't you do it? Izzy just kept breaking distance in this fight and didn't create any sequence or collision exchanges. Sequence exchange meaning that he made DDP miss and then he made him pay, so it's one sequence after another. Collision exchange is when both fighters throw at the same time, and Izzy was able to do it here as he walked DDP into a right hand. DDP wasn't phased, but Izzy needed more of that. Guys, in combat, the goal isn't simply just defending. The goal is to discourage your opponent. You gotta give him a reason to not do what he's doing. The more you can psychologically affect him during the fight, that's where you can win. But if you're not going to do that, there's a good chance your opponent is eventually going to land and get a hold of you. And here's the thing, I obviously understand that countering a blitz is extremely hard. A guy is running and throwing punches at you. Naturally, it's a normal thing to want to evade out of range, but then again, it's not impossible. Why? Because other great fighters on the caliber of Israel Adesanya have done it. How did Max Holloway knock out Korean Zombie when he was getting blitzed? Did he pull his head out of range, move back in a straight line, and make himself a bigger target? No. If you focus on the attention to detail, Max kept his hands high, in the right position, tucked his chin, and made himself a small target to walk Zombie into that overhand right. None of those things in which Izzy tried to do enough. Amanda Nunes knocked down Juliana Pena not because she did all of the things that I mentioned earlier, but because she used her feet to create space and held her ground to land a counter right hand. She didn't keep backing up and allow Juliana Pena to bum rush her with those blitzes. And it's something that Izzy never thought to do enough during the fight. Notice how I'm saying enough, because I do acknowledge the spinning elbow attempts and the up elbow attempts that he tried, but generally speaking, you don't want to get fancy until you establish the basic tactics first. And going back to the original example, how did Jones beat Machida? He held his ground and created a collision exchange that ultimately led to the finish. So it was pretty bizarre that Izzy didn't try to be offensively minded against DDP's blitzes. At least not enough, that's for sure. Once all of his defensive tactics failed, Izzy resorted to backing out of range in a straight line with his head out, eventually causing him to turn towards the cage and his back towards his opponent as he crossed his feet over many times during the fight, and it just left him in bad positions that he should have never allowed himself to be in. This was the beginning of the end, because every time DDP decided to initiate, he would now land these blitzes clean, and Izzy's first instinct is to either make himself a big target rather than making himself small to generate opportunities to counterattack, or he would just turn and run. Quite frankly, I don't understand this turning and running tactic from Izzy, and if you're wondering, yes, he does do this sometimes. In a post-fight show, Dean Thomas and Anthony Smith stated that this was something new from Izzy. No, it's not. He's done this a lot. I've seen it over and over again. When he fought Anderson Silva tried to throw a flying knee as Izzy was stumbling towards the cage, and Izzy executed that same turn and run. However, to pull it out over and over again was just nonsensical, especially if you don't understand how vulnerable it is if your opponent takes your back. His head movement wasn't sharp as well. Him pulling his head out of range is not head movement. He's just avoiding getting hit. That's it. It reminds me of the Ryan Garcia quote-unquote Philly shell, where he just turns away and avoids getting hit. Like, that's not defense. You're just shying away from the fight. There were a few exchanges where Izzy slipped on the outside, dropped under punches, and DDP missed everything. Because DDP doesn't throw uppercuts or knees. You can afford to drop down and make yourself a smaller target, but I guess Izzy is just too used to doing what he does. I thought Izzy rarely used any kind of pivoting in this fight to change angles and reset to the center. What's funny is that in his turn and run exchanges, there were opportunities for him to pivot away from DDP's blitzing, but then again, for him, it wasn't part of the script. All of this led to him making a mistake on the ground, and you already know in the sport of MMA, one wrong mistake, and it might be the last mistake you ever make in that fight.